Most gym owners are bleeding leads and they don't even know it. Here are 6 ways to plug the leaks and start converting like a pro. And by the way, most people miss number 5 and it'll totally kill your conversion. So check out number 5. My name is Mark Fisher from Business Unicorns, and we're on a mission to help gym owners build a gym and a life you love. And here is why today's topic matters. Pretty much every gym owner wants more clients. And to get more clients, gym owners understandably want more leads. But many are not doing a great job with the follow-up, and that's having a real cost. Because think about it like this. Would you rather get 5 members out of 100 leads? Or would you prefer perhaps 5 members out of 25 leads? Or what about 25 members out of 100 leads? Regardless, one of the key numbers that I track if I'm looking to assess how a gym is doing is total leads to new members. The very best gyms in less competitive markets can do as high as 25%. That means 1 out of every 4 leads in a given month results in a membership. Now, I got to real talk you, that's not going to happen everywhere. That is indicative both of a gym owner that's doing a great job. It is indicative of a market that's a little friendlier. It might be indicative of them just not having a massive volume, because of course, the more volume you're doing, by definition, you're going to be dealing with cold leads, and that's going to hurt your conversion throughput to some extent. Having said that, if you're a high-performing gym and you really nail all these strategies I offer you, we should be seeing at least 10% throughput. Now, that might not sound like a lot, but you got to trust me on this one. If you're pulling in 25 to 30, sometimes 50 leads per week, as some gym owners I know are getting, you are going to have to discount a little bit that you're going to be dealing with cold leads and a lot of people you're calling that haven't heard of you and all the rigmarole that make a lot of people understandably get a little bit bored and annoyed at tedious paid ad marketing. But again, even if you're great at marketing and you're getting a ton of leads and you're really tough marketing, it really still can work and come out in the wash, but you have to nail the follow-up. So with that said, let's talk about 6 ways to fix your broken sales funnel. I would say 6 ways to pimp your sales funnel, but can we say that still? All right, let's talk about the first one is speed to lead. You might have heard me or somebody talk about this before. It's a little bit trite, it's a little cliche, and it is true. Speed to lead matters. So the statistic everyone throws around, which may or may not be thrown up because 73% of all statistics on the internet are made up on the spot. The feels true statistic is something like 85% of leads will not sign up for service if they're not called within the first 5 minutes. So we'll talk in a minute about other kinds of follow-up, but this is a manual task, at least until the robot overlords are here. We have to be calling the lead within 5 minutes whenever humanly possible. And this is where I understand this meets the fog of war in the real world, of course, because if you are an actual gym owner, sometimes you're doing other stuff. Sometimes you're training sessions. Maybe you are not at work. Maybe there is a family obligation or something that you really can't stop, drop, and roll. But I'm telling you, if you're really not happy with the results and you want better results, one of the most important things you can do is even just do it for a little bit, be a little flexible. When that lead comes in, stop, drop, and roll. You want to call them immediately when possible, at least within the first 5 minutes. If that's truly not possible, then what are you going to do? Life is not fair sometimes, and people will quite often opt into your lead funnel at 2:30 in the morning when they're quite drunk on their 3rd martini. And even though it'd be better to call them before they sober up, in practice, it might be a little bit weird to call them at 2:30 in the morning. So maybe don't do that, but do your best to call them as soon as you can. Number 2, you want to use automations. Now, I would hope in 2025 this goes without saying, but it doesn't. And I love you a lot. It's okay. And if you're watching this and you don't have automations yet, I'm here to help you out. That's totally okay. But we need to be using some sort of tech platform that allows us to automate and streamline and organize some of the process. Now, again, listen, if you're in the Independent Trainer Plus model, you're doing your own thing, it's just you. Okay, I get it. If you don't need a lot of leads, you don't have a lot of leads, fine. You have my permission for the interim to bury yourself in a life full of well-organized Google Sheets and drop-down tabs and all the things that I have done in my career later than I should have. But in today's day and age, we really should be using some sort of tech platform for this, because what this will do is in the time in the event where you are unable to call the client immediately, you can at least send out a text message and you can send out an email. And importantly, how else are you going to know somebody opted in if you're not at your computer? I suggest have the CRM text you so that you know now's the time to stop, drop, and roll. You can just call them right then and there. The other value of automation is not just systemizing and automating that first outreach, but you can build in a automated follow-up sequence and you can create pipelines and dashboards so every day when you log in, It's sort of like that show Queen's Gambit, which I never watched, but you can just play different chess games all at once. You're just moving each chess game one step forward every day, and a good automation will allow you to see it in a pipeline, and then will even automate some of these processes for you, so you're not manually texting or even copy pasting stuff. You're just pressing buttons and sending off those texts and emails and doing a call. Speaking of calls, number 3, I learned this one the hard way because I didn't know this one longer than maybe should have. Double dialing is very important. As one of my dear friends says, you got to double dial or don't bother. Because in today's day and age, many of our phones are designed in ways that are good and make our life less annoying to not ring if the number is not in the phone. So if a fresh lead opts into your gym and you're calling them as a business from a phone number their phone does not recognize, it's not going to ring. However, your workaround here is if you do a double call, then the phone will actually ring, and some percentage of people will pick up the call and answer. Now, I do think it's an interesting inflection point. I just want to air out right now. Some of my pals, some of actually the smartest pals I know are, I don't want to say completely giving up on the phone call, but they're moving away from it. And it is true, at least anecdotally. I don't know about you. You can give me $1 million to answer my phone for a number I don't know. You better have you better be like threatening my child. Okay, that was dark. So I'm not going to be answering the phone if a random person calls me, and if you double call me, I'm kind of mad at you, right? So I think we need to think through this, but I would note part of the mini challenge we're going through right now, my assessment is because you're dealing with multiple generations. So you might have a different theory here based on the age group you're working with. A lot of the most successful gym owners in today's day and age are going to that 40 and older market. And the reality is once you're certainly into the 50s, you're going to find a lot more people are more comfortable and willing to get on the phone. Further, even if people are responding via text or emails, the first step in a lot of our funnels, I think, should be a quick phone call to sell them on the next step, which is coming in for a strategy session or potentially selling a low barrier offer. And that has to happen in the phone call. It's usually not going to happen over text message. So to be clear, we want to get people on the phone. I think all things being equal, if you have the capacity and you're not seeing the results you want, now is not the time to decide the pieces of this you're not going to do. If you don't have the results you want, you better be calling the people and you better be double calling them, because overall, I do think you will get better results. I just want to acknowledge this might be a thing that starts to change over time, particularly when AI starts to call us, which will quickly signal the end of the society. This is why we can't have nice things. Number 4, the first 3 days is key. And this represents an updating of my own thinking. Hat tip to my dear friend, GR Hoff of Gym Member Machine. If you'd asked me probably even 2 years ago, well, maybe 2.5 years ago, how long I think you should follow up with a new lead, I would say, okay, the first 14 days, you're a freshie. And then after that, you're a ghosted. I'm still going to follow up with you because you're still a lead that's reached out and you haven't declined. But the first 14 days, you my freshie. And I'm going to reach out to a lot over those first 14 days. And while I still think that's true, I think you should follow up over the first 14 days. I got to tell you, it doesn't seem, if you don't get in touch in the first couple days, more often than not, it's not going to happen. They're well on their way from freshie to ghosty. So I think in the first 3 days, you really want to double down. If I were in your shoes, and I am, I might suggest considering going a little bit heavier in those first 72 hours. So that might look like potentially 2 different double dials per day for the first few days, maybe do a text and an email every day. And then by day 4, again, I still think you want some automations and keep trying the first 2 weeks because maybe just something happened in those first few days. They're very, very busy, but accept that after the first few days, it's going to be harder to get them. So go in fast after they opt in. Number 5, I'm really excited to talk about this one. So this is a little bit of a nuanced one. There's a lot I could say about how to do it, but as somebody that has worked with a lot of gym owners and helping improve their follow-up, and as somebody that owns gyms, what I'll tell you is a common missing element in this initial phone call, right? Because all of this is driving to the first call. Now, maybe you have a different model. Maybe you have people opt in to come in for a free class, or maybe they buy a low barrier offer online. I wouldn't say that's wrong, but I think most of the time you want to use this opt-in. The first thing you want to do is get them on the phone call, because if you can talk to them with a human, you can really drive them into whatever the next step is in your particular funnel. Now, here's the key thing about that call, right? We can discuss the nuances of different questions you can ask and different ways to start the conversation when someone picks up. But the key thing to my mind to get somebody to show for that first session, and particularly if there's no pay involved, if you're just selling them into a strategy session, is get to the underlying emotion of why do they care about this? And if I were to give you a specific strategy, I would say you want to ask some question around, cool, can you tell me a little bit more about what you're hoping to achieve? Then from there, the key thing is you might have some people that are going to immediately sob upon you asking that question. And that's, we don't have to sob, but at least congratulations, we found some emotion. Most people will not do that because it's a phone call, right? So what you want to do is you want to do some more rings around the rosy. So if you don't get some sense of emotion and they give you an answer like, I don't know, I just kind of want to work out. Well, in that situation, you might want to ask them, okay, cool, that sounds great. So you want to work out. Can you tell me a little bit about how do you think your life is going to change if you work out more consistently? And then you might get an answer like, I don't know, I guess I'll be working out more. Okay, and then we want to do, I think, at least one more ring around the rosy. If you pressed me, I might ask some question like, okay, cool. So I love all that. So, all right, well, take me to a year from now. Let's say you have really adopted fitness practices. Look at your life. I want you to tell me, like, how do you know your life will have changed? You'll have achieved what you're looking to do. Tell me about what your life looks like in 1 year. Now, again, I got a real talk here. There's some people that are not going to go there with you on the call. There are some people that are just not going to be deeply emotionally available, and you're going to get another, well, I guess a year from now, I'll be working out. And that's okay, right? And I think in the first call, you might just have to pull up and just hope you can get a little bit deeper in the actual strategy session. But I think at the very least, we do want to be trying to dig to some kind of emotion. And particularly if you are not using owner juice, trademark, all rights reserved. If you're not doing the calls yourself and getting the owner juice, you might discover that your team, if you're auditing their calls, which, by the way, maybe that's number 7, you should audit your team's calls, are not really digging in there because it can feel a little bit uncomfortable, it can feel a little bit weird, but we got to get some emotion. Otherwise, you're going to find your show rates are not where we want them to be. Speaking of, number 6, the final way to fix your sales funnel is we got to follow up to get them to show. So the very first and maybe most important piece of this here is having sufficient availability to do the strategy session in the first place, right? Now, again, I'm operating on the assumption that a lot of you watching have a phone call as the first thing into some first visit, whether they bought a low barrier offer and this is the first step, whether you are moving them into the strategy session to sell a low barrier offer, or perhaps you're moving them into strategy session and you're going to sell them right into a membership. I'm operating under the assumption that we are now selling them into a next thing and they haven't, in most situations, given you money. So here's the thing. We really want to make sure the show rate is good because it's not about booking these appointments. It's about having them show up so we can move them whatever the next thing is. The very first piece of this is we have to have sufficient availability. If you're not available, except for Friday mornings at 9 a.m. and Tuesdays at 2 p.m., well, good luck. And I understand that that's maybe triggering you as a gym owner because I know, I get it. You got a lot of things going on and you're training sessions, you're training your team and you're doing other follow-up and you got kids and all that stuff. I get it, but it doesn't change the fact that one of the main factors that is important for sales growth for your gym is just having sufficient availability. People are busy, right? You have to make sure you've got enough available to get them in there when it's convenient for them. Otherwise, you're just going to lose a lot of them. Now, once again, he's being flippant. Let's pull it back towards the cold, hard truth of reality is you're not going to have unlimited bandwidth. So here's the thing. You want to have as much availability as you can. In a perfect world, you would have a wide window that's very short, right? You'd have a lot of availability in the next 24 hours. Get them in there that night if you can. In the event that you can't, if you really can't get them in, or sometimes they're on vacation and they have 3 more days in Acapulco. Acapulco? Am I saying that right? Acapulco? Acapulco. Al Capone? Alpaca. So let's say they're on vacation and they do get you on the phone and they're excited, they want to get in, but they just can't get in for a week. That is going to happen sometimes. So your key thing here is you need to develop some kind of follow-up process. So some of the favorite moves here are if you could send them a personal video message. Listen, I understand that actually is a little bit onerous, a little bit time intensive, but a personal video message will really make it more likely they show up and at the very least, less likely that they ghost you. And if you're talking a full week or more, if I were in your shoes, and I am, I might build in a few different other kinds of follow-up sequences, potentially sending them maybe a piece of content or two that relates to something that has to do with the goals that they mentioned when you were on the call. Even here, we're looking to start being helpful, we're starting to coach, and we're just really starting to build the relationship and say, hey, I see you, you're a specific person, there's things you care about, and I see you, and I'm here to help you with that. And if you do follow up like that, you'll see a higher percentage of people that book the next step actually show up for it. Okay, so in closing, if you want some help with the actual sales process itself and you want to steal our stuff, if you go to go.businessforunicorns.com/sales, you will find a somewhat recently updated sales script. It represents our best thinking for how to actually have the sales conversation once we get them in there. So in closing, remember, it doesn't really matter how many leads you get if we're not following up and getting them in, because the real goal ultimately is to get clients. So my suggestion is maybe review these 6 steps, see if you can identify one that would represent the greatest room for improvement and opportunity for you. Roll it out over the next week or two. Really commit to it, really add this improvement, and I guarantee you're going to see your percentages are going to improve. To learn more about Business for Unicorns, you can click on the links in the description box below where you can get our, as mentioned, free sales script. You can also follow our Business for Unicorns podcast. You can follow us on Instagram, and of course, you can subscribe to this here YouTube channel. Now, before you go, this video was about improving your follow-up, but in practice, sometimes you really do just need more leads. And if that is you, check out my video on 5 strategies to get more leads and more clients. This is Mark Fisher from Business for Unicorns, and I'll see you next time for another video where I will share more actionable tips, psychological frameworks, and philosophy.